Hi everybody, it's Professor Diffley. This is part two of the videos for Unit 3. So where we left off last time, the last video was we just finished this slide, so we're moving on here to the next one. So let me just start this up. Again, as I mentioned before, there's a note section to all of these. Make sure you're looking at these. So let's go. We're talking about mercantilism. So here's a visual representation of the main components, right? The mother country, the goal is to keep the gold and silver inside the country, inside their coffers, keep a favorable balanced trade, which is here more exports outweighing imports. And this is sort of how the system operates. The mother country in relation to the colonies, right? So the colonies, gold, silver, all this stuff goes in the mother country, manufactured goods. So it's a cycle. Again, always goal here is to benefit the mother country. And this is obviously, as it says, the European view of things. The colonies, we're going to see here, have a different view of things, hence the American War of Independence Revolution. So keep going here. So role of the colonies for the mercantilism. Again, colonies are central to the system. They serve the mother country. They provide raw materials, they provide foodstuffs, and consumers. So those are the big three things that they want there. Again, if you're answering a question on this written, it's not enough just to say provide raw materials, foodstuffs, and consumers. Explain it. Again, as you can see here, it's just a sentence or two is all you need. So again, the colonies serve the mother country. And here you see a cartoon, a political cartoon that shows this, right? You see the colonies there are servants, and they're serving the mother country here, bringing her all the stuff that she needs to make themselves richer. Here's just the political cartoon, a little commentary, like I just said. All right, so let's move on to something else. So that is the background, mercantilism. And so England's empire expands during this era. So that's where we're in 1660 to 1750 here, about 100 years, 90 years to be exact. So let's look at this. During this era, the British really begin to expand more and more into the New World. We're going to see there's going to be lots of new colonies, that sort of thing. The first of these is taking of New Netherland from the Dutch. New Netherland, you know it better today as New York. So New Netherland was the name of the colony. New Amsterdam is what you know as New York City. So New Amsterdam, which was Manhattan Island, is now New York City. New Netherlands, the colony, over which includes upstate, all those areas, is larger. So what happens is an Anglo-Dutch war. So Anglo here refers to the British. They're fighting the Dutch over what? You guessed it, trade. This is the mercantilism there. The colony, the British take it from the Dutch here. Now, why does it become New York? The colony is given to the king's brother, James, as his own domain. He was the Duke of York. So hence it's named New York, right? So what's interesting about this is the Dutch fought tooth and nail to defend and keep their other possessions all over the world, in Africa and Asia. However, the Dutch just surrendered Manhattan Island, surrendered New Netherland without a fight. The last Dutch governor, Peter Stuyvesant, just surrendered to them. Question is, why? Well, to the Dutch, the New York, New Netherland wasn't that important to them. There's not a lot of natural resources right there. There's not a lot of gold, silver, that sort of thing. They were making way more money in Asia and Africa and controlling those trade routes. So they gave it up, saw it wasn't worth fighting over. It was supposed to be just a backwoods area anyway. The English, though, saw its value. They saw New York and they recognized it's the best natural harbor on the East Coast. It has deep ports. You can bring in lots of ships, heavy ships, that sort of thing. And they made it an important imperial seaport and trading center. Indeed, New York's motto today is the Empire State. Why? Well, for the English, New York is going to be the key to the New World Empire in many ways. So it's quite funny to think back at it. The Dutch saw no value in Manhattan, in the land that is Manhattan today. It is some of the most expensive real estate on the planet. Still one of our most important seaports, and it's a trading center. I mean, think Wall Street, all that. So New Netherlands is taken over. That one goes pretty easily for them. And you can see here different colonies that are created here. You can see New Netherland. You can see what it was there. That's how far they had gone. And you see dates on when these are created. So New York, 1664, 1636. So when you're looking at this map, and you could expect a question, you might notice some of the, you'll start to see some questions on quizzes where I'll give you a map or I'll give you an image, and you got to interpret it. So one might be, based on this map, what order were the colonies created in? Well, how could you tell? If you look at the dates, right? So which one came first here? It is Plymouth in 1620, right? So that's where we're looking at there. And that's what we're going to be looking at. And then Virginia colony, sorry, the entire Virginia colony. In New England, it's 1620 Plymouth, and then on. So you would look at it that way. All right, let's see. This is a map of King Philip's War, and includes a map of Connecticut. And you can see the Connecticut River. You can see Deerfield, Springfield down here. They're not as close in reality, but that's the old map. And you can see the war between the colonists and the Native Americans here, but we'll come back to that there. So let's look at King Philip's War. Also part of the English expansion in the New World, especially New England. King Philip's War was a war between the English colonies in New England versus the various Native American groups. So it was 1675, 1676, the bloodiest conflict of the era, incredibly bloody by the standards of the day. Centered in New England. And again, as I said, this war between the English and the natives, the Wampanoag, the Nipmuc, Potomac, Pocumtuck, Narragansett. So it's a war against those four: Wampanoag, Nipmuc, Pocumtuck, and Narragansett. It's named after the Wampanoag leader Metacom or Metacomet. You might have seen it different ways. The Americans, or the English here, as we often do, we change names. So we referred to, and they referred to him as King Philip. So King Philip is Metacomet, depends on how you want to spell it. They viewed him as the leader of the above coalition, and he was. He wasn't the leader of all the tribes. He was the Wampanoag leader, but they were the strongest, so he was the representative there. So what caused this war? Well, there's several causes here. One, English expansion and competition. New England's a big area, but it's limited, right? If there's already people here, and the way, remember, in mercantilism, it's zero sum. Either one person has it or the other does. There's no real sharing. So they're looking for more land and resources, and so they keep expanding in New England. The other problem is, for the natives, they owe a lot of money to the English. More and more Native American life was changed by interactions with Europeans. They began to rely on European manufactured goods and things like that. And since they didn't have lots of gold and silver, they ran on debt, which most people do. But eventually your debts get called in. And so more and more debt, and the English often wanted land as a result. The natives are only going to allow this for so long. Number three, growing mistrust, mutual mistrust. They both don't trust each other. Metacomet's brother died in mysterious circumstances. And what do we mean by that? I mean, they couldn't prove, but it was most likely he was murdered. So the natives are angry at this. And murder, again, is a wrongful killing. In the Plymouth colony, they executed 3 Wampanoag men after a questionable trial. Again, they were seemed to be scapegoated. There was a murder of a trader, and a fur trader or something like that, and they blamed the Indians for him, but it's unclear that they actually did it. And the fourth cause, then, is the colonists were afraid that the Indians were going to seek revenge. And so they decided that war was inevitable and figured, let's launch it now before it gets too late. And there had been some raids as colonists encroached on native land. So 4 causes: English colonial expansion, growing native debt, mistrust, and the colonists believed that war was inevitable, so you might as well launch it now. So details, course of the war, you can see all this, but initially it was just native raids on farms and towns. Most of the damage was property-based. Some human casualties, but mostly they were looking to destroy property. Things began to change, though, in December of 1675, when colonists from Plymouth Colony, Mass Bay, and Hartford, and understand this, Springfield, the city of Springfield used to be part of Connecticut Colony, the Hartford Colony. So you got people from Plymouth, Mass, and Hartford, devastating a preemptive attack against the Narragansett. Again, preemptive attack, they figure war is coming, so let's bring it to them first. Interesting, the Narragansett hadn't joined the war yet, but they decided to take them out because they were feared and they were powerful. This is called the Great Swamp Fight to some. The English called it that. The natives would call it a massacre. Why? Well, the colonists destroyed an entire village of Narragansett, including women, children, and elderly. Essentially, they surrounded it and lit fire to the village, killing everybody inside. Whether or not that's a fight, is kind of debatable. But nonetheless, the Narragansett joined the war, and they decided to get revenge. And so they destroyed not only towns, but decided to start killing colonists as well. From their view, it is just giving back what they had got in there. But this escalates the war, of course. By this point, though, it's unclear if these colonies are actually going to survive. Springfield, Deerfield, Northfield, many others were abandoned or mostly abandoned, especially here in October 1675. This is some local history. Springfield is raided by Native Americans. The Hadley Sachem is like leader, chief, attacked Springfield. What they did is they gathered on a palisade hilltop near what is now the Springfield Long Meadow line, and attacked the city. So essentially where they attacked from was Forest Park. If you're going down 91, going south into Connecticut, you can see where there's the overlook and there's the rise in the road there. That's where they attacked. There's historical markers, monuments inside Forest Park about this. So much of Springfield was attacked and destroyed. Thing is, the Indians are going to lose this one. Why? They just don't have the necessary supplies to keep going. As they ran low on supplies as the winter was there, and remember, they became reliant on the English. They just couldn't keep up the fight, and so the colonists hunted them down and killed either or captured all the native leaders and their tribes, and usually came upon them when they were fishing or hunting or trying to just get food and had stopped fighting in many ways. So they systematically hunt and capture everybody. Metacom is eventually sold out by his own men. He was then killed in Plymouth. He's captured and killed, executed. And what they did was they drew and quartered him. That means they cut off all his limbs and cut off his head as a message to the other Indians, Native Americans. His head was carried through the streets of Plymouth, displayed in the center of town for a while for everybody to see. So it's quite brutal, as you can see. So death toll, 600 colonists dead, at least 8,000 Native Americans died, and uncounted thousands were sold into slavery into the Caribbean. And so, what is the historical significance of this? Well, again, hundreds, not thousands, are sold into slavery in the West Indies, the Caribbean. Long-term impact from the English point of view is this pretty much made New England England's. They are going to continue to expand. The Native Americans who were standing in the way are gone. Why? The impact on them was they were decimated. They were, some groups were nearly slaughtered completely. Those that survived scattered throughout the hemisphere, ran away, to try to get away. Many were sold into slavery in the Caribbean, so they were captured and sold away. Native cultures that did survive, and some came back eventually to Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Long Island, while others combined with other fractured nations in places like Brothertown, Wisconsin. Only some of these tribes, part of the problem is for tribes in America to be recognized by the government, the feds have to recognize them. The problem is you need documentation. Now, the problem with these tribes is they were mostly decimated. So it's really hard to get that documentation. So they ended up, combining with others in Brothertown, Wisconsin. So one of the answers to the question is what happened to the Native Americans around this region here? They were destroyed, were sent away and scattered to the wind, unfortunately. Very few came back. You see some of them on Long Island, some in Rhode Island, some in Connecticut, but the most of them were destroyed as a result. So this historical significance, again, opens up English colonization in New England and, more or less destroys the Native Americans and their way of life in this region. So we will continue in the next slides in founding of Carolina in the next video. All right, thank you.